In a past life, Xiaxiu and I met amidst chaos. I was framed by my imperial sister, while he drank the wrong wine meant for the dissolute heir next door. He saved me, and I spared the Xia household from utter ruin. Yet I knew he wished he'd never married me. He wielded swords, I held embroidery needles. He loved military strategy, I adored storybooks. He craved bustle, I cherished stillness. Frail since childhood, I always trailed far behind during military marches, while his childhood sweetheart could gallop alongside him. They were meant to be a perfect match. So when reborn and facing Xiaxiu again, I refused that drugged cup of wine. My sleeves concealed my face as I poured the wine onto my handkerchief. Pulling it away, I feigned wiping my lips. Out of the corner of my eye, my imperial sister's expression mirrored that of my past life. After deceiving her, I breathed a sigh of relief. Now only Xiaxiu remained. I prayed he hadn't drunk the cup meant for the heir of the Duke of Jingua. My eyes darted around the hall. I only remembered Xiaxiu preferred moon-colored robes, making him hard to spot in the crowd. When I finally found him, I realized he was looking at me too. His eyes shone brightly, without a hint of restraint. Looking down, I saw he was holding a wine cup from the next table, one that was already empty. I dropped my handkerchief in fright. If only I had been reborn. Who would Xiaxiu meet in this lifetime? If it were a palace maid, he would surely be accused of corrupting the imperial court. Father Emperor had long sought to punish the Xia family, he would never let this opportunity pass. But he shouldn't have acted this way. I left the hall, claiming I couldn't hold my liquor. If only I could find Xiaxiu's childhood sweetheart, Su Yuning. They were childhood sweethearts, pledged to each other in youth. Without me, they would have been young spouses, an affectionate emperor and empress. Yet fate intervened. In my past life, I existed. Before Xiaxiu's rebellion, as imperial son-in-law, he had to avoid suspicion with Su Yuning. After Xiaxiu's rebellion, Su Yuning had already married another. Between them, friendship and sovereign subject relations remained possible, but never again could they be husband and wife. After ascending the throne, Xiaxiu made me his empress, leaving the harem empty. Every year, memorials from court officials urging the selection of new consorts were invariably rejected. In the end, he even named our daughter Imperial Princess to silence the murmurs. Others believed his love for me was profound, but I alone knew it was merely a case of no other cloud but Mount Wu. Having lost his beloved in youth, he had no room left for affection. Xiaxiu treated me well. He was kind to the child who came unexpectedly from my past life. He knew I was also a victim, never uttering a single word of blame against me. Even when his subordinates suspected my identity as a princess from the former dynasty might lead me to betray him, he resolutely chose to trust me. The Emperor of Wei never treated her well. I believe her. It was you she saved, me and all of you. You have no right to doubt her. When I faced ostracism from the military families, he shielded me in his embrace. It was he who led me away from that prison called the Imperial Palace. Xiaxiu is a kind man. He treated me well, and he treated our child well. I never asked for much, only that he show our daughter a little more affection. For I knew well what happens to children deprived of care. Back then, Xiaxiu said he understood. Our daughter was born in the season when apricot blossoms bloomed, so we nicknamed her Ah Xing. Xiaxiu adored Ah Xing. Even when reviewing memorials in the imperial study until midnight, he deliberately detoured just to catch a glimpse of her. He loved lifting her onto the dragon desk to play, never losing his temper even when she smeared vermilion across his face. Later, as Ah Xing grew, he taught her to ride horses and wield swords. Ah Xing was clever and learned quickly. Sometimes I felt she bore a resemblance to Su Yuning. But that was fine, at least Xiaxiu would love her by association. Those days were a luxury for someone like me, who had spent 18 long years in darkness. Like borrowed light. It had to be repaid. The drifting clouds dispersed. Moonlight fell, and reality set in. But Su Yuning seemed to have vanished, leaving no trace. Fearing something might happen to Xie Xiu, I hid in the side hall where we'd first met in my past life. But instead of Xie Xiu, I was met by Lu Heng, the heir to the Duke of the State. He'd been brought by palace attendants arranged by my imperial sister. In my past life, Xie Xiu had mistakenly drunk the wrong wine, so Lu Heng had been sent instead. Which meant Xie Xiu, like me, hadn't been affected by the love potion. He too wished to escape the events of our past lives. I breathed a sigh of relief. This was for the best. As I turned to leave, I collided with a solid chest. Lifting my gaze, I met those all too familiar eyes. His dark pupils resembled an abyss, reflecting my figure yet concealing all emotion. Just as when he discovered me sneaking away in our past life. Except back then, we were already husband and wife, and I was carrying Ah Xing. I knew his men disliked my presence, and I knew I would become a burden to him. More importantly, I didn't know how to face Su Yuning. So, under the pretext of going out to buy sewing supplies, I slipped away from the maidservant and left. To avoid being found by Xie Xiu and the emperor, I settled in a remote town. At first, life was bearable. I supported myself by selling embroidery, and the months passed without too much hardship. But as Ah Xing grew larger in my womb, my body grew heavier. I began setting up my stall less often, and even short bursts of needlework left me exhausted. The day Xie Xiu found me, I had just returned from the herbalist. A beggar snatched my money pouch and knocked the herbs I carried to the ground. Too weak to chase him, I struggled to crouch down and gather the herbs one by one. I don't recall which herb I was picking up when a scarred hand appeared before me, snatching my herbs away. Holding on to a sliver of hope, I instinctively looked up, only to meet Xie Xiu's eyes. I scrambled to my feet, ready to flee, but he caught up in 2 strides and swept me into his arms. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked, his tone sharp as if apprehending a deserter. "Knowing how heavy you are, yet still running about. Thank goodness you're unharmed. If something had happened to you, how could I? I just didn't want to be a burden to you." His words made me feel guilty, and my voice trailed off. Perhaps exasperated by me, Xie Xiu couldn't continue either. Only a sigh fell beside my ear. "Enough playing around. Come back with me." I wasn't like those women in storybooks, forcibly taken. Instead, I felt more like a child who'd made a mistake and lacked the courage to face him, unable to utter a single protest. And I had no reason to protest. We walked mostly in silence. A few times I asked him to put me down, worried his arms would get tired. "How heavy could you be? Nearly 8 months along and still so light. I wonder if the baby's as skinny as you. Just skin and bones. Or are you planning to run away again?" Seeing I didn't respond, Xie Xiu added, tightening his embrace around me. I dared not meet his gaze, so I simply leaned against him obediently, letting my heartbeat and the clamor of the marketplace compete for dominance. Truthfully, I wanted to ask him if we hadn't had this child, would he still have come looking for me? But I never managed to voice it. Even by the time we returned, when I finally snapped back to awareness, Xie Xiu was still watching me with infinite patience. Yet I averted my eyes from his. "General Xie. Excuse me. Could I borrow him for a moment?" "General Xie? I met the princess for the first time today, how could she know me?" He drew closer, his warm breath brushing against me. "But didn't you know I was the princess?" I returned his words. The patterns on a princess's robes differ from those of common women, it's obvious at a glance. His gaze lingered on the embroidery of my gown, then suddenly lifted to meet mine again. refusing to look away. I hadn't realized the general was so knowledgeable about court ladies' attire. In my past life, he understood these matters least of all. Whenever I did needlework, he deemed it unnecessary. He'd say clothes should simply be functional, why bother embroidering so many intricate patterns? Explaining it to him was futile, he'd often fall asleep mid-sentence. I've been away from my seat for some time. Please, General, allow me to pass. My tone grew firmer, and his smile vanished instantly. How much longer do you intend to play this charade with me? My wish to act like strangers in this lifetime had been shattered by his words. I could only follow his lead. If possible, I wish it could last a lifetime. You didn't drink that cup of wine this time either. Did you? I didn't know why Xiaxiu had come. Logically, he had no reason to be here. Xiu, what are you doing here? Su Yuning's voice echoed. Xiaxiu turned at the sound, and I saw Su Yuning standing behind him. Even the cool moonlight seemed to brighten. Overwhelmed by her heroic spirit, I seized the moment to push Xiaxiu aside and hurried away. Behind me, Xiaxiu's voice faintly called out. Aining. That was the name he'd always call out when drunk in front of me. This lifetime, he'd finally gotten his wish. When I returned to the Grand Hall, my imperial sister, who'd been preparing to summon others to witness the spectacle, was frozen in shock. In my previous life, though I hadn't married that dissolute heir of the Duke of the Nation's household as she'd wished, I'd disrupted father's plan to target the Xie family. For that, I'd been severely reprimanded. This time, her scheme had failed, and her expression was understandably sour. I remained calm, sipping my wine. Beyond my sister's glare, another pair of eyes fixed on me, equally irritating. Xiaxiu followed my footsteps back into the hall, his face equally grim. Su Yuning looked utterly lifeless. After enduring the banquet's end, I sidestepped Xiaxiu and intercepted my elder sister. I didn't drink tonight's wine. Must be disappointing for you, imperial sister. Who gave you the audacity to speak to me like this? With that, she raised her hand. I caught her wrist. Your third-place scholar barely exchanged 2 words with me, and you're already jealous enough to harm me. Who knows how many more innocent women you'll personally eliminate after your marriage? Father will soon grant her marriage to this year's third-place scholar. Little does she know that this husband she carefully selected will abandon her the day Xiaxiu attacks the capital, leaving her trampled to death by fleeing palace servants. Rest assured, I shall select a suitable prince consort for you. She glared at me, her teeth clenched. Very well. But the envoy from Chu will arrive soon. Your imperial sister had best hurry. After all, until it's settled, none of us knows who will be sent for the marriage alliance. I pressed on, goading her further. In my past life, none of us went. Xiaxiu and I were discovered, and since my sister was Father Emperor's cherished jewel, he'd never sacrifice her for a marriage alliance. In the end, other imperial women went. Today, I deliberately brought this up before her only to make her ask Father Emperor to send me instead. In my past life, the escort for the marriage alliance was Qi Hong, a self-important, foolish, useless general who only knew how to theorize on paper. Xiaxiu had clashed with him before, and I knew his character well. When the time came, I would seize an opportunity to escape while the escort was distracted, finally breaking free from my prison. No need to repeat the events of my past life. 5 days later, envoys from Chu arrived in the capital, and Father issued an edict ordering me to marry into the enemy camp. Just when I thought everything was under my control, Xiaxiu volunteered to escort me. Xiaxiu, have you lost your mind? I had been closely monitoring who would be assigned to escort me. Upon hearing this news, I practically ran to the imperial study. Xiaxiu had just emerged from within and, upon seeing me, deliberately walked over, Sunlight fell upon him, his brows and eyes still radiating that carefree, self-assured air. Not calling me General Xia anymore. Your Highness? He deliberately emphasized General Xia and Your Highness to tease me about the palace banquet incident. I'm serious. I glared at him in exasperation, only to find myself lost in the laughter within his eyes. I'm serious too. I couldn't fathom why Xia Shi would dwell on such a trivial matter. In my previous life, I too had first addressed him as General Xia. It was only upon our marriage that I changed my terms. The wedding had been hastily arranged, and the journey had been arduous. Carrying my child and having gone without food for a day, I couldn't even vomit. Perhaps noticing my legs were weak from hunger when he helped me down from the palanquin, Xia Xiu practically entered the bridal chamber with me. The red candles flickered. The fan was moved aside. The deep crimson of my wedding gown reflected on his face, as if he were blushing. Both of us wanted to speak first, yet neither could form a complete sentence. You must be starving. Eat first. No need to wait for me. Turning back, he instructed the servants, the princess cannot drink wine. Bring the prepared plum soup. I won't disturb you tonight. Rest easy. Plum soup. Uncle Li said pregnant women love it. If you dislike it, have the kitchen prepare something you prefer. At that moment, Xia Xiu's thoughtfulness overwhelmed me. I nodded repeatedly, hurriedly thanking him. Thank you, General. Saying thank you twice in a row didn't sound like gratitude, it sounded like a stutter. I quickly added, thank you for your trouble, General. Thank you. But saying it only made Xia Xiu laugh. Saying thank you so many times doesn't feel awkward? You're a princess, not one of my soldiers. And stop calling me General, just call me Xia Xiu. Also, say thank you less often from now on, unless you're addressing me. The memory flashed by, leaving only this life's version of us. Do you realize that in our past life, the Emperor intended for you to escort the marriage alliance? The moment you cross Chu's border, someone will strike. Chu already hates you to the bone. Don't you understand how perilous this is? I pressed on with my warning, but he leaned closer. So you know traveling to Chu is dangerous. I'm not like you. I had no choice. But you do. I countered. I'm merely an unloved princess. Faced with father's decree, I have no room to resist. I met his gaze, forcing myself to speak each word calmly. Song Ning, do you realize you deliberately look me in the eye every time you lie? Xia Xiu's gaze lowered, his eyes darkening with shadow. I stumbled backward in panic, only to find no palace wall behind me. It was him, his hand pressing against my back like a hunter certain of his prey. A hazy memory surfaced, how Xia Xiu often rode his horse during hunts, cornering his prey before drawing his arrow to kill. Now, I seemed no different from that prey. You planned to escape during the marriage alliance journey. He had deduced my thoughts. No. The words caught in my throat halfway out, and I realized I'd fallen into another trap. The rest of my words caught in my throat, spoken. It would have been wrong, unsaid. It was equally unbearable. Fine. I understand. The pressure on my back steadied me before swiftly withdrawing. My affairs concern you not. You need not involve yourself. This lifetime's twists were drifting from my expectations. What path Su Yuning and Xia Shi would take this time remained unknown. Then there's no need for you to dissuade me either. A faint smile touched his lips. Yet it felt bitter and aching to behold. Let's go. We shouldn't be seen meeting privately. Xia Shi raised an eyebrow, his mouth turning down at the corners. It's getting cold. Wear more layers. The winds are fierce in Chu. Be careful you don't get blown away. His gaze swept over me, lingering only briefly before settling on the moonlit hem of my robe. Before I knew it, the day of my departure for the marriage alliance had arrived. Xiaxiu arrived early, his carriage packed to the brim. Why does General Xia travel like a woman? What's in all those trunks and boxes? The envoy mocked. I turned toward the voice and suddenly recalled how, when I once traveled with Xiaxiu, he had similarly filled a carriage just for me. In my past life, Xiaxiu's luggage had been pitifully sparse. He'd said that soldiers must keep everything simple. Later, a few extra sets of clothes appeared in his baggage, all made by me. Back then, I'd just left the capital with him. During the day, he was at the military camp, and with nothing to do, I often spent time with the soldiers' families. When they discovered I could embroider and sew, they all asked me to teach them, saying they wanted to make comfortable undergarments for their husbands serving in the army. I had no reason to refuse. When teaching them, I used Xiaxiu's measurements as a guide. I never intended to give them to him. First, I feared they wouldn't fit. Second, I was well aware of our relationship, until one day he returned and asked if I had made clothes for him. I said no, but he pressed me. Xiaoshan said his wife saw you making a garment and thanked me today. He said if you hadn't taught his wife to sew, he wouldn't have such a well-fitting garment now. He even said I secretly let him enjoy the benefits. Could Xiaoshan be deceiving me? His puzzled expression made me feel embarrassed. I'd just made it while teaching them, I didn't know if it would fit. So I didn't give it to you. I took a set out of the chest and handed it to him. Xiaxi visibly brightened, holding the clothes up to himself. He said it wasn't meant for me, it had my name embroidered on it. He deliberately flipped the collar to show the delicate threadwork spelling Shiyu, as if brandishing evidence to force my admission. Xiaoshan's wife wanted it embroidered, so I used your name as an example. My voice was pitifully small, betraying my guilt. Well then, it seems I still owe Xiaoshan for getting these new clothes. Xiaxiu sighed, glancing past me at the half-open wardrobe. I see you have a few more outfits in there. Since they're just sitting there anyway, why not give them all to me? And so, Xiaxiu cleared out every piece of men's clothing from my wardrobe, then sent over new cloth and silk thread. The measurements are perfect. Just make everything to these dimensions from now on. From that moment, the ladies' thirst for learning grew. One day they wanted to learn shoemaking. The next they craved embroidering mandarin ducks. And everything I made ended up in Xiaxiu's hands. Without exception. I knew nothing of Xiaxiu's plans for this lifetime. The peace mission's caravan moved at a snail's pace, and the Chu envoys were growing discontented. We'd heard General Xia always prioritized marching speed. Why did he now ride like a greenhorn just learning to mount a horse? The mocking voices weren't loud, but among the resting troops, they rippled like pebbles dropped into water, stirring waves of discontent. No one spoke up, yet all eyes turned simultaneously toward the envoy and Xiaxiu. The princess is frail. If we travel too swiftly, the jostling along the way may cause her to fall ill. Should the princess take ill, 10 of your heads would scarcely suffice as recompense. With that, Xiaxiu turned back to stoke the fire. The envoy's face twisted with fury, but mindful of their proximity to Chu's border and Xiaxiu's status, he dared not retort. I exhaled in relief, about to withdraw my gaze when I noticed Xiaxiu had been watching me all along. He tilted his chin toward me, his eyes brimming with laughter. I knew that look of his all too well. In my past life, when Ah Xing was sick, she always refused to take her medicine, unmoved by anyone's coaxing. Xiaxiu would rush over at the sound of her cries. Whatever he whispered in her ear, she'd end up drinking every last drop of the medicine he fed her. When I asked what he'd said to her, he'd call it a secret. I couldn't be bothered to press him further. But then Xiaxiu started going on and on about it. You didn't ask more than a few times. That makes you seem so insincere. Summer clothes were thin. Xiaxiu suddenly pressed close, his right shoulder like a burning ember, searing me raw. Would you tell me if I asked? Yes. He nodded at me. Then what exactly did your majesty say to Ah Xing? I asked again. Truthfully, I no longer wished to know, it was mainly to satisfy him. I told Ah Xing that if she obediently finished her medicine, she could dine upon the dragon throne tonight. This is utter nonsense. Startled, I turned my head only to meet Xia Xiu's amused gaze. It was the sly satisfaction of one who'd gotten his way. His deep-set eyes crinkled in a smile that left one helpless. I even thought he seemed more childlike than Ah Xing. A cool breeze swept in, jolting me back to reality. I quickly lowered the curtain. I next saw Xia Xiu late at night, restless. I stepped outside the tent for fresh air and happened upon him. The rich aroma of rice wafted from the bowl in his hand. Seemed like you hadn't eaten much. He offered the bowl to me. Where'd you get porridge? Hard rations were too dry. Roasted meat too greasy. After the long journey, my appetite was indeed gone. The warm porcelain bowl in my hands stirred my hunger. I made it. I might not be great at much, but porridge should be okay. Thank you, General Xia. I thanked him as the porridge slid down my throat, warming me from the inside out. I told you we don't need to say thank you between us. But this isn't like before. It's better to avoid any misunderstandings. He hurried to correct me, and I hurried to counter him. Silence settled between us once more. You said eating citrus helps with motion sickness. Xia Xiu produced a handful of oranges from who knows where. Where did you find these? Porridge is easy to make, but oranges are hard to come by. I bought them in the nearby town during our rest stop. He almost blurted it out, his tone light, as if it were just a short walk. But from the moment we stopped to rest until now, this was the first time I'd seen him. Xia Xiu, you didn't have to go to all this trouble. You're overthinking it. I'm not doing this for nothing, Xia Xiu countered, glancing down as he casually took the sachets from my waist. Just this one. Give it to me. I taught the palace maids to make these during my rest. This is a woman's sachets, embroidered with lilies. Aren't you embarrassed wearing it? I tried to snatch it back, but Xia Xiu towered over me. Even on tiptoe, I couldn't reach the pouch above. Then make me one that suits me. Xia Xiu said it as if it were the most natural thing, as if we were still in our past lives. I don't have any fabric suitable for you. Only peach pink remains. I have it. I have needles and thread too. You can't deny it. Xia Xiu blurted it out, as if afraid I'd change my mind. When I was led into his tent, sure enough, all those things were prepared for me. Various fabrics, silk threads, even a few warm garments. Where did you buy these? You clearly didn't know anything about this before. A weight settled on my shoulder as he draped the fox fur from the chest over me. Didn't you used to despise my ignorance? You can explain things perfectly to others, but with me, even half a sentence is too much. Xia Xiu lowered his gaze, his fingers tightening slightly as he adjusted the fox fur. His tone was subdued, as if he'd been abandoned by me. I was afraid you'd be bored. You've always been on the battlefield, unfamiliar with women's needlework. I could try to learn, Xia Xiu countered. You're a general destined for greatness. Why bother with such things? Aren't you afraid of embarrassment if others find out? I muttered under my breath, noticing Xia Xiu growing increasingly persistent. What's embarrassing about it? Training troops and waging war protects the people, but the people still need food and clothing. Is it wrong for me to understand these things? I can't win an argument with you. I couldn't be bothered to debate further and pushed him aside to leave. Just because you can't win doesn't mean you can back out. You promised me a sachets, choose the fabric. Xia Xiu crossed his arms, blocking my path with a look that seemed to see right through me. Then return the one you borrowed earlier. Xia Xiu shook his head with a mischievous grin. I'll give it back once you've finished making it. Then you pick the fabric yourself. And what design should I embroider? In my past life, Xiaxiu never cared about fabrics or patterns. Whatever I made, he'd accept it without question. So I never really knew his preferences. And just like that, as if possessed, the words slipped out. His long fingers skimmed the fabrics, finally settling on the jade green piece. Embroider red beans. Then, Xiaxiu smiled as he placed the fabric in my hands. Only then did I notice his sleeve was torn open, the plain white undershirt threatening to spill out through the gash. It looked like it had been ripped by a branch while writing. He didn't even bother changing his torn clothes. This is the only set I have. Xiaxiu shrugged innocently. His expression seemed to say, I know exactly what I'm doing. Bringing all this stuff along, yet not packing a few extra changes of clothes for yourself. I'll mend it for you. I relented after all. I had planned to buy some, but after browsing around, nothing satisfied me. This is all your fault. Really. You spoiled me rotten before, now I feel uncomfortable wearing anything made by others. Where'd you pick that up? I was about to call him a smooth-talking rascal when I looked up and saw Xiaxiu had already stripped down to his undergarments. Those storybooks you used to love reading. His answer was blunt, his eyes fixed on me without a shred of reserve. How could you read those? That's so strange. So unlike you. I only started because you were always reading them. Xing said you looked so happy when you read. The past was being dug up like this, leaving me reeling. I quickly took the clothes from his hands and sat by the lamp to mend them. Seeing this, Xiaxiu fell silent, watching me quietly in the lamplight. Just like in my past life. In the wartime barracks. Candlelight flickered as he studied battle reports while I did needlework beside him. When his eyes grew heavy, he'd sit beside me and watch me work. Often, he'd drift off while watching. I'd always tell him he could sleep in the bed while I took the bench. But every time, he'd fall asleep on the bench first. As I gathered threads and cut the needle, Xiaxiu still watched me with unwavering focus. The tent was stifling hot, and my face grew warm too. Xiaxiu, were you pretending to sleep the whole time in my past life? Xiaxiu's fingertip traced the stitches, looking at me with a puzzled expression. In my past life, when you watched me do needlework or put Xing to sleep, he'd often fall asleep on my bed while rocking her. With Xing in his arms, I dared not wake him, afraid of startling Xing too. Often, I'd sit by the bedside waiting for him to wake. But as I waited, exhaustion would overtake me, and I'd fall asleep myself. When I'd wake, Xiaxiu would be gone, and I'd find myself lying in bed. Since you knew I was pretending to sleep, why didn't you wake me? Xiaxiu's expression was utterly innocent, making it seem as though I was the one with ulterior motives. Candlelight flickered across the tent, casting our shadows close together, as if they were kissing. But for us, that was the most extravagant thing imaginable. Suddenly, a third shadow appeared on the tent, standing with hands behind his back between Xiaxiu and me, clearly outside the tent. Xiaxiu and I shot upright. He shook his head at me, signaling not to go out. A princess sent for a political marriage and the general escorting her, alone together in the dead of night. Witnesses would surely spread rumors. The nobleman seeks me? Xiaxiu's voice came from outside. His tone suggested the visitor was likely the Chu envoy. Seeing the general's tent still lit, I feared the candlestick might tip over and cause a fire. So I came to check. I couldn't sleep, studying the route ahead. Does that put your mind at ease? Your Excellency? Whether it's insomnia or studying matters of the flesh, I believe the general knows better than I. We haven't reached Chu yet. If I were to send word to the Wei Emperor, I fear the general might never leave Wei. The envoy's words made my heart tighten. I merely asked a palace maid to mend my clothes. If that alone warrants decapitation, it would be a grave injustice. Xia Xiu remained utterly unfazed. A palace maid? Every woman in the marriage alliance procession will become the sovereign's consort. Your words are rash, General. To equate mending clothes with infidelity suggests the true sovereign's mind is far too narrow. Xia Xiu. Don't think your silver tongue can sweep this under the rug. Dare you let me inspect your tent? Certainly. But nightfall brings poor lighting. And my tent holds many weapons, I fear you might be injured. Xia Xiu chuckled. Hearing this, I hastily extinguished the lamp. You'd better pray I don't find anything. The envoy was clearly a coward. After uttering his threat, he left. As the sounds outside gradually faded, I groped my way to the curtain, intending to leave myself. Unexpectedly, I collided head-on with Xie Xiu. I was rushing out, and he was rushing in. I stumbled backward from the impact, while he lunged forward, trying to catch me. In the confusion, we both fell onto a bed. Fortunately, Xia Xiu reacted quickly, bracing himself on either side of me. Are you okay? I'm fine. We were so close that leaning forward slightly would have brought our lips together. But neither of us moved closer. In my memories, Xie Xiu and I were husband and wife. Yet more often than not, we were like friends. Mutual respect, that was all. Perhaps in the fleeting madness after the herbal medicine, we kissed. In my past life, I was awakened by the sound of someone breaking down the door. The first person I saw was Xie Xiu. He'd woken before me, though not much more lucid. He pressed his hand to his forehead, meeting my gaze with confusion. My gut told me he had no idea who I was. But I knew exactly who he was. The young general with glorious military achievements. The capital's rising star who'd fallen from grace only to climb back up. I'd occasionally buy second-hand storybooks from palace maids, several of which were written around Xie Xiu. Though we'd never met, it felt like we'd seen each other 1,000 times over. I'm sorry. I must have been set up. Perhaps the approaching footsteps snapped him back to reality. Xie Xiu left all the blankets for me and hurriedly rose to put on his clothes. I still don't know who you are, young lady, but I will take responsibility. His words came fast, as if afraid I might misunderstand his intentions. Before I could speak, he had already drawn the curtain, separating me from the intruding crowd. Thus, the enraged emperor, the meddling imperial sister, and the gawking guests were all barred outside the curtain by Xie Xiu. True to his word, he shouldered everything. No one could lift the curtain before him to see my disarray. Xie Xiu was just as the storybooks described, honest and upright, willing to take responsibility for his actions. The only difference was that we didn't share the mutual affection scripted in those tales. In comparison, I felt more like the villain disrupting the protagonist's destined union. After leaving the capital, I often encountered Su Yuning seeking out Xie Xiu. Each time, she would leave in tears. I couldn't understand why Xie Xiu was so conflicted. He loved Su Yuning, yet could be so ruthless. Snapping back from my memories, I suddenly realized I'd kissed Xie Xiu's lips without knowing when it happened. I jerked my head away, my face flushing without warning. The envoy knows a woman is in my tent. He'll definitely send someone to watch tonight. Sleep here tonight. Once things calm down tomorrow, I'll send you back. Xie Xiu rose and moved toward the dim light to remove my shoes. Xie Xiu. A man and a woman alone together, it's inappropriate. What we're doing wrong, Su Yuning. In our past life, you and I were forced into it. This time, neither of us repeated that mistake. You still have a chance with her. My foot instinctively tried to pull back, but he held it firmly. So you've been avoiding me all this time because of her? Aining. That cup of wine I drank in our past life, she switched it for me. Aining? Are you calling me? Countless memories surged back. Through past and present lives. Xiaoxiu had called out Aning countless times. Most often when he wasn't fully conscious. And I always thought he was calling for Su Yuning. Who else could it be but you? He removed my shoes and socks. Then covered me completely with the quilt. Who did you think I was calling? Xiaoxiu finally realized. I hadn't spoken. Yet he guessed it quickly. You thought I was always calling Su Yuning? Xiaoxiu hung his head, laughing to himself. So all these years of flirtatious glances were wasted on a blind man. No wonder you didn't turn around when I called your name after we reunited. He sighed deeply, resignedly saying, so that's how it was. I didn't know you'd call me that. Xiaoxiu rarely used such an intimate term when sober. In public, he'd address me as madam, later as empress. In private, he seldom spoke my name. I thought you disliked it. The last syllable of I was swallowed. In the dim light, I could barely make out his mouth forming the words. His eyes still held a trace of hurt. He actually felt hurt first. Then why did you get yourself so drunk and come looking for me on the day Su Yuning lost her husband? Xiaoxiu chuckled softly. Just like the day he'd embraced me while drunk. His face buried in my shoulder. His breath tickling me like a tickle. But I knew nothing of Su Yuning's situation. Had you not mentioned it, I wouldn't have even recalled both events happened on the same day. All I knew was that day. I pretended to be drunk to draw you out. But got nothing. I wanted to be closer to you. Yet you only wiped my face with a warm towel. It stuck in my throat. If I remember correctly, what Xiaoxiu said that day was, Aning, what must I do for you to even glance my way? Memories shot through time like arrows, striking me dead. Aning, you like me too, don't you? My shoulder suddenly felt lighter as Xiaoxiu stepped before me. Every glimmer of light seemed to refract into his eyes in that instant. And reflected within them was me. Aning, you're jealous of me, aren't you? He called my name over and over like a child desperate for an answer. I never imagined Xiaoxiu could be this irritating. Following the light pouring from his eyes, I kissed Xiaoxiu. At first, it was a fleeting touch. Then a deliberate plunge into the net. With no room to retreat. The love we never fully understood in our past lives surged forth. Impossible to say who felt more or less. Yet Xiaoxiu stopped at just the right moment. Perhaps noticing my flushed cheeks. He asked with a smile, Are you disappointed? I don't even know what you're talking about. I burrowed deep into the blankets. Afraid he'd touch my burning cheeks. Outside the covers, Xiaoxiu's voice remained cheerful. Aren't you curious why I didn't take the antidote this time? Yet still went to the place where we met in our past life? I feared something might happen to you. So I brought the antidote. Given another chance. I still wish to meet you, but not in the way we did last time. I cherished Xing. But if it meant sacrificing you, I'd rather give her up. My hand peeking out from the covers was gently grasped by his. Warmth spreading through me, just as it had when I left him last time. Only in the past life. Until the moment I closed my eyes. Xiaoxiu and I never saw each other one last time. I died in the 6th year of Xiaoxiu's reign. That year, Xing had just turned 9 when the Eastern Qi invaded. And Xiaoxiu personally led the campaign. The imperial physician said I had carried an illness since childhood. Giving birth to Xing at a young age, coupled with years of constant travel, had left my body depleted. No medicine could help. I never imagined Xiaoxiu would remember the physician's words. This lifetime, I didn't want to bind him with Xing, nor did I want him to abandon Xing to keep me. I leaned out and embraced him. Xiaoxiu's shoulders were broad, making it somewhat difficult to hold him. When I left in my past life, you came, didn't you? Xiaoxiu's body visibly stiffened. I came, but I still arrived too late. You had more important matters to attend to. At that time, Dongqi invaded, and Xiaxiu had to lead the campaign personally. I remember the news of victory arrived just days before my death. Yet in those few short days, Xiaxiu rushed from the border to my side. Suddenly, a line from a storybook came to mind, "Someone will come for you." He had always been coming for me. And so, Xiaxiu and I fell asleep in each other's arms. I slept soundly for the first time in ages. I awoke in a carriage. Peering out at the sound of the wheels, I saw Xiaxiu riding ahead. Fewer people traveled with us now. Looking closer, Chu's troops had vanished entirely. A faint, soothing fragrance lingered on him, one I'd blended for Xiaxiu in my past life. Only then did I realize my restful sleep last night was no accident. Xiaxiu had inflicted multiple defeats upon Chu. Yet he had also saved Chu's third prince in one battle. From that point onward, the two had shaken hands in truce, tacitly ending the war. One sought power, the other plotted rebellion, and the friendship with Chu remained unbroken until my death in my previous life. I had forgotten this. Xiaxiu must have explained the situation to the third prince of Chu long ago. His sharp exchanges with the envoy were likely a diversion to deceive my father's spies. For Chu, abandoning me meant shedding Wei's surveillance. Why wouldn't they? With Wei on the brink of collapse, their alliance was nothing but a paper lantern, fragile and easily shattered. Awake? Hungry? Xiaxiu turned his horse to ride alongside the carriage. Not bad. My calming incense, how did you get it? I haven't even prepared it for him in this lifetime yet. It's just a few herbs, I wouldn't forget. Xiaxiu wore a smug expression. If I hadn't made myself clear, were you planning to drug me unconscious and take me to Liangzhou? Never dare. I'd appeal to your reason and emotions. Xiaxiu's expression darkened instantly. If you truly wish to avoid another lifetime with me, I'll settle you in Liangzhou. I won't force you. But a marriage alliance with Chu? Absolutely not. Xiaxiu leaned his head inside, flashing a pout only I could see. Childish. I tapped his brow. Watch the road. Upon returning to Liangzhou, Su Yuning awaited us beneath the city gates. Her surprise was palpable. Sure you. Why is the princess here? I recognized that look, the same one she wore when she led soldiers and their families to isolate me in my past life. She made everyone believe I was Father Emperor's spy, feigning weakness to win Xiaxiu's pity. And I, too, believed I had torn them apart, choosing to bear all the consequences of what I did to Su Yuning. Anning is the wife I've chosen, so naturally she must come to Liangzhou. Xiaxiu seized my hand, raising it high above our heads where everyone beneath the city gates could see. He declared my identity before I could speak, just as he always had, steadfastly shielding me behind him. Liangzhou suffers hardship. I deliberately deceived the imperial court into providing the dowry meant for a political marriage to aid the people here. Consider it my contribution to the general's burden. I turned to look at the procession behind me, treasures my father had prepared for the marriage alliance. To Xiaxiu, they were undoubtedly the finest military provisions, and my first step toward earning everyone's recognition. This time, Xiaxiu was the one taken aback, his hand stiffening slightly as he released mine. Su Yuning's face drained of color. She was astonished. In this lifetime, I was no pushover. Upon entering the city, Xiaxiu hurriedly pulled me into the carriage. Keep those things for yourself. I don't want them. His refusal was abrupt, his face flushing slightly. Why not? You're the one who said military campaigns require money everywhere. I was puzzled by Xiaxiu's attitude. I have money. Keep yours. I simply won't take it. Xiaxiu seemed to feel his resolve wavered, adding another sentence. Is General Xia concerned about his reputation? Afraid people will think he bends for money? Though I understood his thoughts, I couldn't resist teasing him. That's not what I meant. I don't want them to think I'm marrying you for your treasures. I want to marry you solely because you are Song Ning. That's all. I know. But I also want to do something for you. I can't stay under your protection forever. I need to earn their genuine respect. I explained to Xie Xiu. In my past life, when Xie Xiu insisted on keeping me, most of his people initially objected. If they weren't united, how could they stand together against external threats? Fine then. Consider this money a loan from me. I'll write the promissory note right now. I couldn't persuade him, so I let him have his way. Just like in my past life, Xie Xiu arranged for me to stay in the quietest courtyard of the Xie residence. I hadn't brought much luggage from the capital, but Xie Xiu added quite a few things for me. After settling in, I sat in the courtyard enjoying the cool evening breeze. An apricot tree grew there. When Xing was little, she always loved pulling me to sit beneath it. This life without Xing, to say I don't miss her would be a lie. Thinking of Xing, Xie Xiu appeared behind me without warning. I nodded at him. In my past life, I spent too little time with her. I never knew how things turned out for you two afterward. Xing was very intelligent, far more suited than I to be ruler of a nation. She lived happily, finding someone she loved who loved her deeply in return. She also told me many things about you. It was only then that I understood our feelings weren't one-sided after all. Xing said you believed she was born on the day the apricot blossoms bloomed. Hence her childhood name Xing. But that's not how I see it. Xie Xiu wore a hint of mystery. When you were pregnant, I'd already decided her childhood name would be Xing, regardless of gender. Why? I asked him. You craved apricots during your pregnancy. Xie Xiu gave me his reason. You remember that clearly. Sunlight filtered through swaying leaves. Its warmth particularly soothing. I still remember Xing telling me you always said she resembled Su Yuning. Ning. I never thought of it that way. Xing is our child. Nothing more. But then Xie Xiu paused. If it matters to you, we can have a son later. You can teach him medicine and embroidery. What do you say? I shot him a look. What nonsense. Life back in Liangzhou felt no different from my past life. Xie Xiu was preparing for war and too busy to spare a moment. I taught the wives and daughters needlework, occasionally taking their pulses. At first they treated me with reverence, but gradually they realized I was no different from them. As fellow women, with husbands fighting on the same side, there was no need for mutual hostility. Time flew by. Xie Xiu led his troops in rebellion, capturing 3 cities in succession. Armed with memories from my past life, victory came swiftly. Yet war inevitably brought casualties. I joined several family members knowledgeable in herbs to serve as military medics, tending to the wounded soldiers. Beyond provisions, medicinal supplies were crucial to the army. In my spare time, I would go into the mountains with the womenfolk to gather herbs. Sometimes, when the army returned victorious, they were busy reuniting with their families. So I went alone, taking advantage of being by myself. I also sought to dispose of certain secrets. It was during this time that Su Yuning arrived with her entourage. A princess venturing into the mountains alone, without a single escort? Surely you're not up to some unsavory business? Su Yuning stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the freshly dug grave I had just covered. I came to gather herbs. That is all. But Miss Su, following me into the mountains with your men? Are you not seeking to silence me? I scanned the people beside Su Yuning, most were underlings of her elder brother. Su Yu. We are not the Wei Emperor, we would never commit indiscriminate murder. Could it be that the princess believes her current actions deserve death? Su Yuning signaled to the soldiers behind her. They quickly rushed forward and began digging up the earth behind me. I did not stop them, for I truly had done nothing to betray Xie Xiu. I have only one request, do not inform General Xia of today's events. I cannot say whether Su Yuning merely sought to find incriminating evidence against me. Fortunately, I had been cautious. In my previous life, my father's spies were everywhere. I would never have foolishly gone up the mountain alone. I had simply instructed them to wait at the foot of the mountain for 15 minutes, until I had resolved matters before ascending. By now, the quarter hour should be up. Song Ning, you really are up to something. Su Yuning was still gloating until her subordinates handed her several yellowed storybooks. What are these? In disbelief, Su Yuning flipped through the dust-covered books, searching for any trace of my betrayal against Xiaxiu. But these were truly just storybooks. They were stories I'd traded for from palace maids before meeting Xiaxiu, stories written with him as the model. In my past life, I burned them before my wedding, fearing Xiaxiu would discover them and mistakenly believe I'd schemed to tear him and Su Yuning apart. This lifetime, thinking I'd never see him again, I brought the stories out of the capital. I feared he would mock me if he discovered it. Yet I dared not burn it at the Xie residence for fear of arousing suspicion. Today, when I finally found an opportunity, Su Yuning stumbled upon me. I bought this storybook long ago, fearing General Xia would mock me if he learned of it. So I intended to bury it secretly. That is also why I asked you to keep it confidential. How could this be? How could you? Su Yuning flipped through the storybook repeatedly, but I hadn't yet discovered the secret within. I saw the general's name in this storybook. I believe the princess's words. One subordinate broke the deadlock, and one after another spoke up for me. Yes. Thanks to the princess. My wife has such skill to make clothes for me. I also believe the princess. My mother caught a cold last month, and it was the princess who saved her. Enough. What do you know? Su Yuning snapped. A few petty favors bought your loyalty? Sure, you and I grew up together. Deeply in love, why would he suddenly marry her? She must have seduced him, leading him to abandon his vows. As the daughter of the Wei Emperor, how could she ever truly care for you? As she spoke, Su Yuning lunged forward, reaching for me. In the blink of an eye, a branch shot through the air, striking Su Yuning squarely on the arm. I instinctively stepped back, only to find someone grasping my shoulder. Looking up, I saw Xiaxiu's profile, jaw clenched, fury boiling over. Xiyu. Su Yuning finally regained her composure. Xiyu. You must believe me. It's the princess, she deliberately framed me. Miss Su's excuses are truly endless. Xiaxiu said coldly. First she claimed something must be amiss with Ning going up the mountain alone. Now she says she's framing you. Yuning, have you misunderstood the princess? Anyone with eyes can see who's right and who's wrong. Suyu hurriedly interjected, trying to smooth things over. General. Princess. Surely Yuning is just panicking out of concern. Suyu gave Su Yuning a meaningful glance. Brother. Why won't you stand by me? Song Ning is cunning and malicious. She seduced the general first, then learned of our childhood friendship and devised the scheme to frame me, all to eliminate me from his side. A sharp slap cut off Su Yuning's words. The hand belonged to Suyu. Though he couldn't bear it, he had no choice. The general has always treated you like a sister. How could the princess possibly feel jealous? I'm certain you heard this from someone with ulterior motives. They deliberately stirred up trouble, and only someone as foolish as you would jump in headfirst. Suyu rebuked, shielding the stunned Su Yuning behind him. Since it was all a misunderstanding and I wasn't hurt, let's just drop this matter. I still need to gather medicinal herbs. The soldiers have come back to Liangzhou to reunite with their families. There's no need to waste time here. I understood Su Yu's meaning. He knew Su Yuning was at fault, but she was his own sister after all. He would discipline her, yet he would also protect her. As the crowd dispersed, The mountain forest returned to its former tranquility. Aren't you coming down the mountain with them? I stared at the storybook Suyuning had tossed aside, my heart pounding. Are you trying to get rid of me? Xiaxiu raised an eyebrow. I just don't want you to have too much military work. I replied nervously. Is it because you're afraid I have too much military work? Or because you're afraid I'll see your storybook? What kind of storybook is it that you're afraid I'll laugh at you? Xiaxiu said, walking over to pick it up. Just some stories based on you. You wouldn't like them, the plots are all boring. I snatched it back hastily, only for Xiaxiu to pick up another volume to examine. If they're so dull, why go to the trouble of bringing them all the way from the capital? Judging by the creases in these pages, you've read them many times. How can you enjoy them if the plots are so tedious? Xiaxiu. His words made my face flush, and I hurriedly stopped him. This tactic worked wonders on Xiaxiu. He promptly tossed the stories back into the pit. They really shouldn't be read. I'll bury them for you right now. After all, the real Xiaxiu now belongs to you. These fictional versions are no longer needed. You're such a smart aleck, I retorted irritably. But how did you find your way here? Even if the guards spotted Suyuning down the mountain and rushed back with news, it couldn't have been this fast. I had someone watching Suyuning. Back at the palace banquet, I exposed her for drugging me. She suspected you told me then. After returning to Liangzhou, I noticed her constantly inquiring about you. So I kept a close eye on her. Suyu and I grew up together since childhood, and I was practically Suyuning's childhood sweetheart too. But any affection between us was severed completely when she drugged me in my past life. I've also told Suyu about the poisoning incident. He knows this sister of his has been spoiled rotten since childhood. He plans to send her back to our hometown and bring her back under his strict guidance once the war ends. By then, we should be preparing for our wedding. Xiaxi whispered into my ear, his stray hair blown by his breath, tickling my skin. That's ages away. I jabbed his chest and continued deeper into the woods, carrying the bamboo basket. Ages? I've calculated it precisely, this time. It'll be half a year sooner than my past life. Our last wedding was too rushed. Ah Ning, wait for me. Xiaxiu caught up, his face tense, only relaxing when he saw me smiling. You're teasing me again. He pouted. Didn't you say I could be more willful? Yes. Even more so. Under the sunlight, two shadows intertwined. After all the twists and turns, thankfully, we found each other. Xiaxiu, the side story. The first time Xiaxiu saw Song Ning, or more accurately, the first time he saw her clearly while sober, was in bed. She resembled a wounded little bird, still bearing the marks he had left on her. When their eyes met, Xiaxiu felt as if his own heart had been packed. Xiaxiu knew this was a calculated scheme. He had always been a heavy drinker. A few cups of wine were nowhere near enough to leave him this intoxicated. The Wei Emperor had long feared him. Devising such a scheme against him wasn't beyond the realm of possibility. But judging by her expression, she knew nothing of this affair. She must have been dragged into it by him. Xiaxi recalled that Su Yuning had visited before he drank, and the crown prince next door had spoken with her several times. Yet they were childhood sweethearts. Why would she harm him? The violent slam of the door snapped Xiaxiu from his thoughts. He hurriedly shielded her behind the curtain. After all, she was a woman. Being discovered disheveled would surely cause her embarrassment. Soon, Xiaxiu learned her identity, Song Ning, the Emperor of Wei's daughter, a princess without even a title. This encounter had been orchestrated by Song Ning's elder sister. Xiaxi was not part of the plan. So when the Emperor of Wei saw him with Song Ning, he flew into a rage. Song Ning was, after all, a princess. Punishing him would be slapping the imperial family in the face. Thus, Song Ning saved Xiaxiu, and the emperor bestowed a marriage upon them. They had never met before, their first encounter was in bed. She had been framed by her sister, while he had been betrayed by his childhood sweetheart. Xia Xiyu recalled his mother. She and his father had been arranged to marry without love, a union born of familial interests. Shortly after their wedding, his father brought home another woman, though his mother remained the matriarch of the Xia household. Xia Xiyu understood her true desire was his father's affection, so she poured all her devotion into him. As long as he outperformed his father's other children, his father would visit her courtyard. Thus, Xia Xiyu's childhood was spent amidst constant scolding and beatings. Often, midway through a beating, his mother would suddenly embrace him and weep. "Xiyu, if you ever marry, you must love her deeply. If you cannot love her wholeheartedly, then please spare her." Later, his mother died in sorrow, never once visited by his father until her final breath. Then the Xia family fell. His father was murdered. His concubine mother, unable to endure the hardships of exile, drowned herself in the river with his younger brother. His father had thought he enjoyed the blessings of a man with many wives. Yet in the end, he lost his wife and children. So what would his relationship with Song Ning be like? Xia Xiyu began to imagine. She was the daughter of the Wei Emperor. He was a rebel about to revolt. They should have been on opposing sides. Yet they were each other's benefactors. During the wedding preparations, Song Ning saved him once more. She informed Emperor Wei of her pregnancy, hastening the marriage and sparing him from escorting the princess for the political alliance. Though he shared a bond with the third prince of Chu, Song Ning remained unaware of this connection. She chose to save him resolutely. More significantly, she was carrying their child. It was during this time that Su Yuning frequently sought him out, weeping as she confessed her reasons for drugging him. Fearing the Emperor of Wei would target him, and learning of a plot against Song Ning, she had devised the scheme. Su Yuning claimed her love for him was the driving force behind her actions. Xia Xiyu found it laughable. If she truly loved him, why didn't she trust he could find his own way out? Why drag Song Ning into this? Xia Xiyu refused to become his father, nor would he allow their unborn child to follow the same path. On their wedding day, red candles flickered as she gazed at him timidly, like a rabbit trapped in a tiger's jaws. The repeated address of General Xia, respectful yet distant, drove them apart. "We're husband and wife now," Xia Xiyu thought. "Why still call me General Xia? It feels so cold." Song Ning likely disliked him. Even back in the capital, she'd avoided him in Liangzhou. It only intensified. She'd rather mingle with the other wives than speak to him. She'd sew garments but never bring them to him. Fine. Don't bring them, Xia Xiyu thought. I can ask for them myself. If she was quiet, he'd talk to her more. But he didn't understand. He understood military strategy, but not needlework. He could discuss battle formations, but not love. Back and forth. The awkwardness between them only deepened. But Xia Xiyu never imagined Song Ning would leave. Where could a pregnant, vulnerable woman go in these chaotic times? Xia Xiyu felt himself going mad, searching for her day and night. Yet when he finally found her, he dared not approach. He feared startling her, feared she would despise him. Without him, she might have lived a different life. Perhaps she already had a beloved, dreaming of harmonious companionship and growing old together. Yet fate had brought her to him. He watched her sell embroideries daily, secretly fending off those who sought to trouble her. She smiled at every passing customer, and Xia Xiyu often felt an urge to buy every single piece of her work. He wanted to ask her, could she smile at him just a little more? Amidst the turbulent times, he ultimately brought her back to his home. Not long after, she gave birth to a daughter, their Ah Xing. Xia Xiyu would never forget the day she asked him to be kinder to Ah Xing. It was the day Ah Xing was born. Her tone was cautious, as if afraid he might refuse. Xiaxiu felt as if a dull knife were stabbing his heart, causing his entire chest to ache. He knew well how pitiful a child unloved by her father could be. He knew even more clearly how painful it was for a woman unloved by her husband. But Song Ning didn't know that he actually loved her deeply. Xiaxiu had always believed that one day, Song Ning would feel his love. But time waits for no one. And they had only 10 years together. He didn't even get to see her one last time. The imperial physician said her childhood illness had left her with a chronic condition, and the premature birth had depleted her vitality beyond recovery. When he left for battle, she had promised to wait for his return. Yet by the time Xiaxiu galloped back to the capital, her eyes had closed forever. Her palms still held warmth, yet could no longer grasp his. For the rest of his life, she would be gone. Xiaxiu had once dared to hope that he and Song Ning might meet again in the next life. But he never imagined that when he opened his eyes again, he would find himself back on the very day they first met. Thankfully, she hadn't forgotten him either. The end.